Chapter 1 The Last Call to Duty. Despite enjoying her job as an agent of the 50 States program for the magically gifted, Natalia knew she couldn't do this forever. She was already 30 years old, and she wanted to have a family of her own, so she put in her papers along with her fiancé, Buck Ringtail, to make this mission their last mission together, before retiring from the 50 States program. After all, most Tanukis, like herself and Buck Ringtail, were expected to marry shortly after graduating high school and college and not to wait around till they're 30. After all, her father and mother married when they were 21, after they were able to support themselves with their own jobs, and had Natalia when they were 25, who was the oldest of 4 children. And it was Natalia, being married at 30, that her future mother-in-law, Catherine Ringtail, secretly judged her for, even if she didn't say it out loud. And it wasn't like Natalia ever had to deal with her father-in-law, with him being sentenced to life in prison for being the former leader of organized crime in the Tanuki Republic. And knowing that Tom Ringtail was responsible for as the Don, Natalia didn't care to see him either. All she knew was that after this last mission she was going to marry Buck and spend the rest of her life with her husband and start a family of her own. And this was her mission: destroy the Keys of Prosperity, kill the Dark Mage, and destroy King Azrael's rule over the Void Kingdom. The mission was simple, but this would not be something so easily possible had it not been for one key factor: that fairy girl, Crown Princess Titania. Titania was daughter to King Azrael, who was the king of the Void Kingdom, hence had all power given her if she were to ever return. But despite her future as a princess to a very prominent king, she chose to remain with Natalia after her exile. Because for as much as being crown princess was a means to such worldly power and prestige, the love Titania had with Natalia and so many others that truly loved her, unlike her father and the other princes, made her life worth living, and she became so close to Natalia that she was willing to give up her life as a princess to stay with her, even after discovering the true intentions as to why Natalia was sent after her in the first place. After all, Titania wasn't surprised when she learned Natalia was originally sent to indoctrinate her into doing her own country's bidding. She would find out sooner or later, especially given the times the U.S. government tried to control her using Natalia. But what they didn't count on was Natalia choosing not to follow orders, choosing rather to align herself with the ways of her fellow American citizens than the corrupt federal government employers that the American citizens despised, along with the best leadership in the military like Grand Admiral Jedediah Jenkins. And part of those real American values was treating like people, rather than as a means to an end, and the freedom for people to become who God made them to be. But despite Natalia's love for her own country, she knew well that her position in life was mostly from factors outside her control, and didn't pretend like all her achievements in life were because of her efforts alone. She knew how many other people were involved and had the humility to acknowledge it. And it's why she very much despised the arrogance of wealthy businessmen who gained their wealth off the backs of poverty wages, making the 13th Amendment of the Bill of Rights, abolishing slavery in 1864, effectively meaningless. And despite it being 238 years since the end of the American Civil War, slavery just took on a new form from the whipping and auctioning of human beings shipped in from the Islamic slave trade in Africa to the modern slavery of mindless consumerism and poverty wages, preventing people from ever rising above their station in life or ever being able to leave their situation for better opportunities. And such things influenced Natalia's father to not be like those capitalists who exploit their workers but treat his workers as people and pay them living wages and real benefits rather than hoard his financial success for himself while pretending to be a self-made man. And like her father, Natalia was not concerned so much with the false dichotomies of capitalism versus communism, political parties, nor reactionaries, but her primary concern for others being their own well-being. And it was over Titania's well-being that she became something of Titania's true mother figure, despite being a completely different species. But such is the nature of real love that goes beyond the natural love between one's kind and extends even to outsiders, and eventually even enemies. But even if such love could extend to Titania's enemies, with one of them even being her own father by blood, King Azrael still had the free will to reject it, and continue down the path of perdition. And the path of perdition was what Natalia expected to happen to King Azrael, even to take his perdition with his pride into his own grave. Such, if it ever came down to it, killing Azrael would not be killing a person, but removing filth from the world. And because Natalia knew what King Azrael had put Titania through, Natalia didn't care that she had to cooperate with someone she hated to accomplish her mission. That person being the Fox Queen Inari. Natalia had hoped that the stories the Tanukis told about Inari and her vanity and hatred of Tanukis were fake and exaggerations. But she learned otherwise when she met Inari in person. And although Inari wasn't murderous nor seeking to see Tanuki suffer, there was no denying Inari looked down on Tanukis as uncivilized savages, and their civilization as primitive, almost sub-animal. Then again, Inari was a product of her times in the 1100s, when the Tanukis really were primitive semi-nomadic tribes of hunters and gatherers, before Inari's brother, Father Victor, with the other members of the Kitsune civilization, taught the Tanukis agriculture and writing and gave the tools to build a civilization of their own. And before that, the Tanukis were mostly known to outsiders as pirates and bandits. There were also the other aspects of Tanuki society that also made them incompatible with the Kitsunes, such as their open rejection of collectivism and monarchy, with the famous speech among the Tanukis when they first began their society in the 1200s. We shall be one nation under God, and as the Church rules by consensus, we too shall follow in the footsteps of the Holy Fathers, and come to consensus in deciding how we ought to manage the welfare of our society. And in rejecting that icon of Sabellianism, we reject being ruled by an incestuous tiny hat gang called monarchy, for only God is worthy to be king. Therefore, let anyone who shall call himself king over the Tanukis, and beyond first amongst equals, be seen as a blasphemer and someone who incites schism, for we have the words of the Holy Gospel themselves. Yet it shall not be so among you, but whoever desires to be great among you, let him be your servant. Instead, we shall be a republic with God as our king. And forasmuch as the Tanukis rejected the collectivism of the Kitsunes, they also rejected the other extreme of pure individualism, and instead saw each other as sharing a common humanity, yet differing in personhood. Such ways of the Tanukis would be passed down through many generations, and even to Natalia herself. Hence, many Tanukis found it easy to integrate themselves into the real American society, outside the dystopian metropolises, who truly exemplified the real American way of life. And it was this real American way of life that Natalia had grown up with in Kansas, and the Tanuki way of life her fiancé Buck Ringtail grew up with before he emigrated to the United States. And the first stop in completing their mission was to group up with Finnegan Fenwick, whom Inari was holding as a debt prisoner, and Finnegan, to pay back Inari, was going along with Natalia and Buck to destroy the keys of prosperity. Did you know this? We have no king but God. This is a common American sentiment, and is used to justify our historical choice to be a republic rather than ruled by a king. Some sectarians within online Orthodox circles have called this, and anything that isn't absolute monarchy, anti-Christian. But it isn't worth noting that the Orthodox Church has never held an ecumenical council over a preferred system of civil government, and has existed in many societies with many different systems of civil governance, which include, but are not limited to, communism, Soviet Union, republics, United States, monarchies, UK, empires, Rome and Byzantium, and tribes, Alaska and Africa. But one thing that has remained consistent is referring to God as the true King and Lord over all that exists. The only times the Orthodox Church has ever held an ecumenical council were times when there were universal issues facing the whole Church, such as the Arian heresy, and coming to a consensus on a universal day for the celebrating of Easter.